Welcome to ASHB's quarterly Smart Home Council webinar meeting. My name is Marta Koptovska. I am the Programs and Communications Manager here at ASHB. I will be emceeing the slides, and note that today's webinar will be recorded and we will circulate the recording along with the presentation slides to those that are in attendance today, and of course those who couldn't make it but who have also registered. Quick look at today's agenda. We will have a call to order, welcome introductions, and about the Smart Home Council. I'll go over a couple in administrative tasks. And then Greg Walker will brief everyone on our annual research project that takes place here at ASHB in the residential space. And I think for most of you here today in attendance, we will then head and introduce our keynote for today. From smart homes to intelligent infrastructure, why the network is becoming the foundation of residential design with Akram Khalis from MHT Technologies. And that will also include, of course, a Q&A. So if you do have any questions, we'll take those either throughout the presentation or after. We'll have Akram decide that once he's introduced. And then, of course, we'll just go over a couple of the programs here at ASHB, the podcast, white papers, journal, get into some new business and any new announcements taking place. And then, of course, we will adjourn. With that, I will pass it off to Ken Wax, who is the Smart Home Council Chair. Ken?
Marta, thank you very much. I would like to welcome everyone to this quarterly meeting of the ASHB Smart Home Council. The Council initiates and reviews projects related to the connected home and multiple dwelling unit technologies and applications. This council was established more than 20 years ago in 2004.
Good morning or good afternoon.
Welcome. The council also examines industry opportunities that can accelerate the adoption of new technologies, consumer electronics, and broadband services within the growing connected home market. The Smart Home Council webinars and selected research topics explore industry-shaping trends and forces and the use of technology to make connected homes more flexible, adaptable, and human-centric. For some administrative matters, we keep minutes of each meeting. They're available at ashb.com/SHC. Marta has posted the minutes from last March. If anyone has any concern about the accuracy of the minutes, could you please let us know now? And I'll wait just a moment. Otherwise, we'll consider the minutes approved. So any comments on the previous minutes? Hearing none, then let's consider the minutes approved. We do have an open call for vice chair of this committee. If anyone has an interest, of course, please let Marta know, and we would welcome you as vice chair. So now we'll hear an update on research from Greg Walker, the CEO of ASHB.
Thanks, Ken. And just to add to that, the vice chair call. It's a lot of the heavy lifting is done by Marta and organizing a lot of the meetings, and the vice chair has a lot of as part of the responsibility of a vice chair, along with the chair, is to select the keynotes and go over the agenda before it gets to this actual meeting time. But it's a minimal amount of effort. But if anyone's interested, feel free to ping Marta, and then we can go from there.
I will second that, Greg, and say I wish I had Marta in my other committees.
I think I did a good job when I was doing this role too, Ken.
Thank you, Ken.
That's not at all to denigrate your contributions, Greg. Thank you.
All right. So I'll go over this. I'll go over briefly this. So this council It does a crowd-funded research project every year, and it's done through the auspices of ASHB. And essentially, what we do is we go to our members, and they chip in funds, and then we give it to a research firm to conduct a collaborative research project where people get on the steering committee, and each company has allowed three individuals on the steering committee to shape the research project. And we've eventually settled in on a more of a general topic than with some deeper dive opportunities, but that we're doing annually. So this is you'll see it says 2025, but we're doing this in 2026 now, and it's smart home trends and adoption, the technology adoption, and the research project is looking at around 500 consumers across Canada and the US, looking at sort of a perspective on the operator outlook and some of the technology adoptions, and looking at market analysis and some industry insights into that impact the smart home market. And there's definitely a market sizing component to this project as well. And they're doing, Harbor Research is doing a series of PowerPoint presentations with some infographics, and really trying to get your finger on the pulse of what's going on in the smart home space throughout the year. And there's still opportunity to get involved, and they're doing some deep dives into certain aspects, into areas of this particular research. They're doing a deeper dive into AI and edge first architecture in the smart home, and agentic and generative AI in the smart home, and how it's evolving in the smart home space. So if there's anybody who's interested in getting involved in this particular research project, feel free to reach out, and we can get, and you can get the full research and get involved in the steering committee for a fraction of the cost of the project itself. So it's the project as a whole is around like a $50,000 or $60,000 piece of research. So if there's any interest, feel free to reach out to anyone from ASHB, and we can have a call and discuss it in more detail. So maybe if we go to the next slide. So I guess I'm also doing the introduction here for Akram. So this is our keynote presentation for the day. This is from smart homes to intelligent infrastructure, why the network is becoming the foundation of residential design. So this presentation will look at as smart homes become more connected and sophisticated. The underlying network infrastructure is increasingly shaping how homes are designed, powered, and operated. This presentation will explore the growing role of low voltage DC systems, PoE, which is obviously power over Ethernet, and unifying network architectures to create scalable, flexible, and efficient residential environments. The discussion will examine the shift from device-centric automation to infrastructure-driven design, and will highlight how builders, integrators, designers can prepare for the next generation of intelligent homes. So our keynote speaker today is Akram, or AK, who's the CEO of MHT Technologies and co-founder of Inspextor, having previous roles in the last 7 years as the chief technology officer at MHT, and with more than a decade of experience in hardware, software, smart building technologies, and he's recognized for his work in advancing power over Ethernet for lighting and building automation, and he holds 3 U.S. technology patents, and he has a Bachelor's of Science in Electrical Engineering from the New Jersey Institute of Technology. So with that, I'll pass it off to Akram to go with the keynote presentation, and there will be an opportunity for everyone to have questions at the end. So there may be a 30-minute presentation or so, and then with some opportunity for questions from the audience. So Akram, take it away.
Perfect. Greg, Ken, and Martha, thank you for the opportunity, and good afternoon, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure, because I think this is my first time doing a presentation at ASHB, and I look forward to many more. To mention what Greg talked through is really about why the network is becoming the foundation for the residential design, and that's going to be my topic of the day. As Greg mentioned, so my name is Akram Khalis. I go by AK, co-founder and CEO of MHT. And if we look at over the last 20 years or so, we've watched smart home industry explodes. We've seen devices, added connected devices into the homes come to us. But something interesting has happened along the way. We pretty much spend a tremendous amount of time connecting these devices, but we spent less time thinking about the infrastructure connecting them. We buy these consumer devices as they use for homes, and then we either plug them in and figure out a way to install them, but we haven't really think through the integrations. Today, I'd like to suggest that we're going to talk about the next generation homes and how it's defined and how many of us seen these connected devices become containers, and then how do we actually connect them all together to achieve the same outcome. We know that this is really what the session is about, and I'd like to begin with the following slides. So smart homes has reached an inflection point, as I was mentioning. I think when we look at the very long time ago where we added devices to the homes and felt like it was an innovation. Now we just buy devices and they're smart by native. If you look at it, it's completely very normal in new homes to design them with EV chargers, energy management, AI-powered devices like the Alexas and Google Homes to achieve that smartness. But homeowners no longer want individual smart product. I mean, it's very complex when you have even, if you don't even achieve the level of what I call smart of a home, just the automation alone can become tedious. Pulling up devices, trying to figure out which app does what, it becomes super time consuming at this point. Yes, 10 years ago, it was an actual privilege to have these smart things, but now we want them all connected. And at that same time, AI is beginning to move really fast. And I think I'm only on minute number 1 in the presentation, and I had to bring up the word AI because we know that today it moved so rapidly from a chat box to building code to now to the physical world to humanoids, and God knows what's happening in the next 6 months, let alone in the next couple of years. With that, the problem of many homes still relies on infrastructure. It's the ability to put products into the homes, but really the connectivity itself. We know the broadband has already caught up. We can understand we went from copper to fiber pretty quick, and now we have the connectivity into the homes. But what infrastructure are we using to build these homes? And I think that's the inflection points that we're seeing. So how did we get here? Let's see if we can take a look. We started from the electrical outlet. It's very apparent that we're still using it today. And we look back at the history of residentials, it's a clear pattern. We went from a major leap that starts between plug things in and then have the infrastructure directly into Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. And that was the innovative movement when it came to homes because the infrastructure itself couldn't support products, which means that the consumer product that came to homes had to focus on batteries, Bluetooth, and Wi-Fi. And with that, each of these steps created a foundation for the next layer. If we look from connected devices to smart home to intelligence, we still have to layer down the intelligence factor, which is in every movement requiring power. And that's exactly where we are today. The next evolution, it's not another product. It's not another gadget. It's the infrastructure that allows all of this to work. We know that the ability to have a smart home exists today, and we've seen it, and I'm going to talk about some of that later on in the slides. But what we really want to do is how do we build new homes with the right infrastructure that supports what we have today and truly what's coming next? And I think that's the factor that we know it's moving towards data and artificial intelligence. So once we start adding more connected devices, other challenges became very apparent. The device problem became more on the devices themselves. Today, every manufacturer has a version of smart device, whether it's HVAC, security, shades, appliances, energy, voice assistants. All of that in the service looks like it's progress. However, if we look at every one of these devices, on its own, it has its own app, it has its own gateway, communication protocol. All of these devices require some level of intelligence to operate between each other. And how many of us have been into a smart level of home where it became actually more cumbersome that you want it either to work or if it doesn't work on automated schedules, you forget about it. And yes, we do leverage the connected smart home devices, again, like the the Siris, the Alexas, the Google Homes for initiation. But those right now are still an initiation device if they don't do any proactiveness. If we take it a layer deeper, each of those communications sometimes even it's harder to install or it's not as simplified for a homeowner experience. Hence why we have still that challenge of what protocol do we use? And I don't think the answer is what protocol do we use. It's probably what infrastructure should we be using. And we've added intelligent individual devices, but not really necessarily to the home itself. That's why I like the statement at the bottom side of the screen. More devices does not automatically create more intelligence. That just creates more difficulties, if you ask me, and homeowners to actually how to operate these things. So if the problem is in devices themselves, what do we think the solution is? Let's take a look at the infrastructure. Infrastructure has changed, and it has done a tremendous move going from power. And when people think about smart homes, they usually think about the devices. They don't really think about how do I get the power into the device. And I think I take an example of a thermostat and a camera. Those are the two devices I recognize the difficulty. Whenever we went from an an analog thermostat to an intelligent thermostat, we had to bring low voltage wiring into it. Otherwise, you couldn't do that over battery. You couldn't do that over just Bluetooth, and you had to bring power into it. And the cameras did the same thing. We went from coax and power into power over Ethernet or into an intelligent camera. I think that's the move that we're seeing. The infrastructure itself allows for those systems to communicate because they operate under the same infrastructure level. And when power and data and controls are brought in a common network, the home starts behaving as an intelligent layer. The environment itself that collects the independent system became so important. And that's the shift of thinking. That's what we're seeing, the unified infrastructure become so powerful in homes, residential, and of course other avenues as well. So what does the infrastructure looks like? And it starts with probably one familiar technology that we all know. Let's take a look. It's Ethernet. I think we all recognize the Ethernet capabilities and what it does. And if we look at the most homes or most people around the world, they immediately recognize the Ethernet. It's a global standard that's already established, and it brings, I think the most recognizable thing is either a printer or a computer. That was the first thing we plugged it into the network. But Ethernet quite became something much bigger. Today, it's a reliable, secure, powered network or high scalable platform that allows us to communicate over that same cable. But not only that, we moved from wireless or Bluetooth to Ethernet that offers more predictability or a performance level with low latencies and bring in technologies or data into that same cable. Why is that important? With a single cable, I can simplify an installation and bring in power and data. Today, yes, if you have a home that already exists and it has the infrastructure of AC, you practically have less of a choice and you have to plug in devices that support either wireless or Bluetooth. But if you have a choice and you need to bring power into the endpoint, it's so much easier, cheaper, faster to do it over this category cable or DC power. And of course, you want to do it as fast as you can to make sure that these devices are compatible. One thing you recognize, Ethernet is an infrastructure. The next step is asking an important question. What if that same network can deliver power at the same time as well? So now I'd like to introduce another important shift, which is what happened in our industry. For over a century, we designed buildings around AC systems and distribution systems. It's proven that it's reliable, it's designed, it's obviously standard around the world. But homes are filled with electronics that immediately convert the AC to DC. How many of us know already that your computer only needs DC? Your lighting only needs DC. Your gadget that you buy or product that you buy in a smart home is a DC product. It's not an AC product. Yet, because the consumer or product consumer industry had to adapt knowing that the infrastructure already AC, so we just had to put an AC converter. Imagine that AC didn't exist and you had DC. Things would be a lot easier, of course, safer. There's no risk of fire from DC, or at least low voltage DC. So the question becomes, Why aren't we converting power over Ethernet throughout the home and thinking differently about how power distribution looks like? Well, low voltage DC gives us that opportunity. Instead of treating every new technology as another electrical project, we can begin thinking about it more flexible infrastructure that grows as the home grows. It's not about replacing everything overnight. I think personally, it's about recognizing that the home is designed for the next 20 years that's different than what the last 20 years looks like. If the physical AI needs to come in and it requires DC to charge and it has the capabilities of batteries and it has the capabilities of infrastructure, how do we adapt to it going forward? Of course, 20 years ago, that was not a subject, and therefore that's the reason I think we are where we are. And the shift of infrastructure is so important in the designer community that we need to start thinking in that fashion. But one technology is that's helping make it possible, is fault managed power systems or fault managed power. Let's take a look what that looks like. One of the challenges of the traditional low voltage systems, I think that's known, is PoE is limited to 100 meters or 330 feet as an established communication platform that's recognized around the world. Well, this is where fault managed power comes into play, where now we can have a product like Panduit, an MHT partner that develop the product that's DC based, that brings a much longer distance and a higher power into the edge devices. This is where we can talk about a game changer of the ability to bring power safely, but over kilometers of distance, not really 100 meters. That difference creates the infrastructure shift for larger homes, longer cables, even infrastructure to come in. We know that to bring infrastructure in the homes was a challenge, even from a broadband standpoint. Now we made it a little bit easier, or this technology can make it a lot more easier to bring 2 kilowatts over 18.2 cables and pulse it rather than the traditional mechanism. As residential technology evolves, I think platforms like FMP is another tool that really differentiate how homes are being built with a data infrastructure. Again, this is the DC infrastructure with data embedded in it because it allows us to deliver what we need to the home today, but bring that infrastructure that scales with us as AI is coming towards us. So now that I think it's the look of DC infrastructure from one technology becomes more familiar that obviously to what PoE does. And that's next slide. I touched on this, and I think maybe most of the audience could be familiar with it, but Power over Ethernet, or PoE, is probably the most widely recognized example of how low voltage infrastructure today is changing. The existing PoE isn't just a simple power device. It's the combination of power and communication over that same cable. Gives us a lot more future ability to upgrade, allows us for more centralized power management, and of course enables the remote connectivity to the edge device. With the traditional mechanism, if I deliver AC to the endpoint, I have no visibility to it other than the breaker tripping or maybe something bigger happening on the other side. With a technology like Power over Ethernet or DC infrastructure that has data and power combination, it allows you for that feedback. You know exactly what's happening on the other side. That's information we don't have today or in the traditional mechanism. This infrastructure alone doesn't create intelligent homes. It transforms the infrastructure into an experience, and that experience is only available to the user via something like a software. Let's take a look what that is. Software definitions or homes are becoming much more software defined. So far, we talked about the infrastructure, and that's how do we actually bring this. I think about it the way home builders would do. I need to lay the foundations before I can start talking about what sheetrock I need or what type of fixtures I need in the ceilings. We talked about how do we bring this smart home together, and we need to bring it with infrastructure. Now that we have that, how do we layer the intelligence above it so that way we can create that smart home that we just talked about early on? We truly need to make an intelligent home different, and the way to do that is through software. Historically, homes have been built using a fixed systems. It was either you install a lighting control, an HVAC control, an access camera, and again, you had your choice as a consumer to buy these devices or buy these capabilities as you go. but you had to buy them based on infrastructure that exists today, which means that it create capabilities that you may not even want, and obviously it became more cumbersome to maintain. But if you want something new and not typical, you had to install more hardware. Right now, with the infrastructure and software changes, this becomes almost like a marketplace. Once you have that infrastructure layer and you have the devices, the software layer can change much faster. We all know how easy it is for software to adapt, but it's so much difficult to change hardware, let alone try to change infrastructure. The point I'm trying to make is the very important piece to make in the decision of building a smart home is to change the infrastructure. Then think about the product. At that point, software becomes your easy entry to smart home or to the outcomes you're looking for. And this is the reason why I describe modern homes as becoming software defined. The physical infrastructure provides capabilities, but software really gives us that level of intelligence that the user is really intended to have or want. And that's where a software like Ada from building AI solutions comes into play. Ada is our intelligent home management system platform. It's the operating layer that sits right above the infrastructure, but not all the way to the consumer device. We don't want to replace again, the assistants of the homes, the ones that I mentioned earlier. They still are useful. But if you look at what you use, the majority of the people use them today to play music. You call the name, you say play music, and that's pretty much all you can do. What if there's an intelligent layer that attached to it and it allows you to just say, make my home smart, make me feel comfortable. And now these phrases, what I call tokens, go down to the Ada layer, and then Ada understands what does that mean. Because the most common thing that we look at in Ada is really three elements: energy savings, tenant comfort, and predictive maintenance. And those are the fundamentals of how every home is being built. I want to save energy, I want to be comfortable, and I want to know when things are broken. And that's what Ada brings basically together. Rather than managing every system and every application independently, which is obviously centralized from a visibility standpoint, but it's very hard to connect. What if there was a layer where you can just use artificial intelligence or an assistant to get you what you need, and then leave the layer of intelligence at the software stack like Ada to give you that automation as it goes. And building AI solutions, their product Ada is what does that. As more systems, of course, become connected, we look at homeowners, property managers. They don't want dashboards. They don't want a text alert. They want to know only when things are broken, or they want to know when they need to know. At the very least, a lot of SaaS product early on was more about how do I create value out of the data that I'm collecting. And that was just putting more dashboards, putting more visibility to the user, and then let them make those decisions. Today, that's not necessary. AI does that for you. You can just ask, if you have the data stack, you could ask AI for an outcome and it'll just look at the data and give you that same outcome. That could be 1 or 2 sentences, or that could be a paragraph or a report. But without the infrastructure that to start with, without the data layer, that token does not do anything if there's nothing underneath it. So the role of software becomes the intelligence. And I think that's the most apparent, the most obvious piece now that we are seeing more and more is how do actually the devices connect into the software layer, and how do I take that one step above to get to the intelligent layer? But even the most advanced software depend on one single thing, and that is AI. We know that artificial intelligence becomes the biggest topic today. We can't stop talking about how fast it does things. What we also recognize is we don't want fast with AI, because that also proved to be very expensive. If I'm looking for a consolidation of a financial report, I might not want to get that information immediately and burn a lot of tokens. But if I'm looking for an image to send to my friends, I need it in 30 seconds. And this is where reaching the level of intelligence needs the hardware to support it. I may want my intelligent system not to have the latest chips, and I don't want the consumer to think about, am I going to have to change what's behind my light bulb every single time there's a new GPU that comes in? No. Inferencing is what's important. As long as the model exists, you can now drop it to the lowest hardware that you have already deployed, and it'll still achieve the same functions. Yes, we do need those capabilities, that latest and greatest GPUs for higher tasks that we need later on, and we don't know what those are. Those could be self-driving cars for humanoids. But I would still now call them trivial tasks for just automating your home and getting you comfortable. Those are pretty trivial tasks that now already have inferencing and skills that can be deployed right into the homes or the infrastructure that supports that home. And without those pieces, AI really has very little to work with. Imagine if there's nothing underneath or there's no infrastructure that supports it. Yeah, AI becomes just your chat box talking back and giving you some recommendation based on what you want for dinner. When we put the pieces together, AI moves beyond just let's talk about the information that you get versus what the outcome is. If the outcome is I want to be comfortable, that's that's much more deeper than what is the weather today. Because those two tasks, one is factual, you can go get the information. The other requires a loop and require intelligence downstream. And I think that's the value that we're seeing for where AI now can become more connected to what actually we care about, or I would say not just what we care about, but deeper than just a chatbot. And that what's happened in the residential isn't just happen in isolation. It's in many ways following the same path in a commercial buildings as well. For many years, we thought about commercial buildings and residentials are two separate ones. However, COVID really brought them together. It wasn't a long weekend that we had to go home. It wasn't a PTO. During COVID, we all had to go home. And we had to figure out how to make home our commercial space, whether I was at a kitchen table with a dog in my lap or I was in my office that I had for many years. It didn't matter. I had to adopt and bring the commercial settings into home, and I had to do the work that I'm supposed to be doing in that environment. And what did that do to the infrastructure change? It allowed people that worked in a commercial that allowed people that went to work in commercial settings to understand what does it mean to have a comfortable home. And that meant I can just get up and change my lighting. I can just do my whatever I need to do. And of course, that brought back to the commercial settings after COVID. And I think it created commercial buildings demonstrated that value already because building management system is a non-negotiating thing in commercial buildings. Software defined operations already exist. Operation management already exists. Those things existed in the commercial settings. Residential had that same approach, but now after COVID became more apparent. And if we look at technology and the way it scales, the design principles are becoming also similar. When you're designing a home, it's the same exact concept. We didn't need certain things in homes back then, like an EV charging to be mandatory, or a RJ45 cable at the corner of the exterior lighting because you want cameras. These things are now becoming into fruitions because we learned from what the commercial stack did. We wanted commercial to bring that, and what it did, it brought infrastructure, shared data, centralized management, and of course now the intelligent layer. That's why I believe we're seeing or we're witnessing a conversion between these two worlds. And what does that mean for everything to come together when everything comes together? We talked about networking and DC power. We talked about power over Ethernet, software, intelligence. None of these technologies exist to solve one problem on their own. The value there is to have them work together. When the lighting and the climate and the security and the proximity of me coming home and everything works together, that's the intelligent layer we're looking for. No one really wants to manage systems independently because the experience becomes so lacking. And the better the experience, the less technology the user has to touch. At the home level, that basically could mean just we don't have to do anything. If the system understands where you are and who you are, and I know it sounds very scary knowing that systems know who you are and where you are, but believe me, we all know that they understand and they listen all day long. So it's not something new. We just need to adopt and accept the fact that it will actually use that and leverage it. Maybe unanimously, I can still agree to that, and take that and bring it into what the smart home outcome needs to be. If that's where the residential design is heading, what should we be thinking about today? So I believe that we're getting into a period where infrastructure decisions are made at the design level. It's too late if you build a home and now you want to put new infrastructure based on what we just talked about. It's going to become very cumbersome. But at the design level, builders, architects, engineers, technology professionals, they're not designing for one system or they're not designing for today's need. They have to design for what's coming. And as scary as it is, we all know that what's coming is it's much faster than it has been beforehand. So how do we be prepared for it? Is the conversation is changing between should it be individual systems or should it be as an infrastructure that adapts to the future? And I think we all know the answer. Homes can accept new software, but it's very hard to change the infrastructure once you build it. It's kind of devastating to know I built a home and I have to tear it down to put new infrastructure. So much easier to say I have the right infrastructure. I just need to buy new software or I just need to adapt a new intelligence layer. It's truly about the choices we make today because they can impact the life cycle of that home. And we know that there's homes that are hundreds of years old, 50 years old, 10 years old. And I think that's important to keep in mind is that this is not a scarcity moment. This is just a reality that we have to shift the infrastructure in order for us to be compatible with what's coming and what's here today already. Let's see if we can leave us with the final thought. As people ask me, or when they ask me about homes of the futures, I chuckle. I really don't know what the home of the future looks like. I have visions of what I want, and that's only near future because companies are advertising it, or I maybe watch it in the movies. But I have no idea what's coming. I just know that it has to be more connected. More connected means the least amount of things I have to touch as a user, as a consumer. Because the more things I touch, that means it's very inefficient, it's super cumbersome. But it'll be much easier for it to be more adapted, efficient, and intelligent. And maybe more importantly, if it's the design community continue to improve along the way, and maybe construction can create that complete story back into the end user. That's why I believe that intelligent infrastructure is truly the way to go when we are designing residential constructions going forward. The future, it's not about building a smarter device. I don't think there is one. I think they're all smart, which means there is none that have that capabilities. It's about building a home that's ready for what's here and for what's coming next. I truly thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here at ASHB, and I really share all these thoughts. And I believe that the residential infrastructure is headed to that direction. I'll pause, and I'll be happy to answer any thoughts, questions, or discussions. Thank you.
I think Oleg, you have a question?
Greg, I did see a question in the Q&A section. Does the person who said it want to speak up?
I think Oleg has just took
we have
off mute.
Oleg, Daniel, and David all posed questions. Is Oleg there? Oleg asks, can you reference the standard which should provide clarity on how devices should communicate to each other to avoid the integration issues?
Sorry, can you repeat the first part of the sentence or the question, or maybe the whole question?
Can you reference the standard which should provide clarity on how devices should communicate? In other words, is your proposed infrastructure based on a standard that you can cite?
Absolutely. The IEEE is one that I can think about from an infrastructure perspective. Matter seems to be the most adopted from a software layer, but I would say at the infrastructure layer, you do want a hard standard because the interoperability of devices can become very challenging. At the software layer, it's a lot more lenient, which means this interoperability becomes a lot more easier. If a software stack is not the right approach, then we can pivot to something else. I would say I would agree that the infrastructure itself should and has to be, if I have to put a preference there, on an IEEE standard because that's something that we know it's recognizable and interoperable in the future.
You're proposing an Ethernet infrastructure for homes? Did I
That's
understand?
correct. Yeah.
Now, there is a standard. I chair an ISO IEC committee, and our committee has published ISO IEC 11801 that specifies infrastructure wiring for buildings and homes. So you might look at that one.
Perfect. Thank you.
In fact, if you buy Ethernet, sometimes it comes stamped right on the jacket that it conforms with ISO IEC 11801.
That's excellent. Perfect.
So we have a question from Daniel Holcomb. Daniel, want me to read it or would you like to ask it?
Yeah, I could definitely ask it. One of the things that I'm always curious about is how you really reduce the fragmentation. I was reading that the section that you mentioned, I believe it was ADA, is probably how it's pronounced.
Yes.
And I was wondering if that could actually reduce the fragmentation if you're using multiple vendors. I think it is hard in the B2B world, whether you're talking about multifamily or commercial, to really be able to get everything from one vendor. And so is really this something that's geared towards reducing that fragmentation? Is this kind of a one ring to rule them all sort of situation?
That is exactly correct. You're absolutely right. It's the middle layer that's going to do that today because it's very difficult. And it's when I say difficult, it's just because it's going to have to take time to retrofit every single protocol and bring it all from one vendor. It's not even economical. But to have an ADA in between that can translate all of this into an intelligent layer and then have the consumer product on top of it or a building management system on top of it, that's probably the right way to go for now. Because these products like ADA and from Building AI Solutions are built to be that layer. And they are the middleware and they can operate at the front layer also, but most likely to be that aggregator between vendors and bring it up to a common stack. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. If I may ask a quick follow-up, and if this gives away too much of the secret sauce, I totally understand if you can't answer it. Do you have to work with different vendors to get them to synchronize with that, or can it really work with just basically about any vendor if you're able to give away how that works?
That's actually a very good question. I do have the answer. So the couple of years ago, that would be so challenging to say yes, because we have not seen the adoptions of API. We all know what API means, but we don't understand. Vendors may not understand it to their capabilities. Today, ADA pretty much works with every vendor out there. Why? Because software defined itself, it became such a commodity that AI can build it. So to build integrations, it becomes a lot easier to create that layer of intelligence that I was talking about, energy savings model or skills, tenant comfort, and predictive maintenance. That's the secret sauce. But just to integrate with products downstream, it became so facilitated that your regular chatbot can do it.
Let's see, we have a question from David Katz. David, do you want to pose it or shall I read it?
I want to build on what was just said. First of all, I think there are different challenges between single family residential and multifamily. And I did see recently in the commercial space on Realcomm the PoE for lighting and how it's going to do all the data collection and bring it back to the BMS. But my question is, how are we going to, in the home, control the appliance as to when the dryer should go on or when the light should change, given the inputs and outputs? And how is the data that you might send to AI to say this is what should be done going to set a signal to the appliance or thermostat or blinds or physical device that has to change in order to get the result? Does Matter do that now? It doesn't seem to.
I think I understood your question. Are you asking, maybe just rephrase it one more time just to make sure I give you the
I
right
think
answer.
he's asking who's going to exercise the control for the various applications.
Okay. That exists today. Today you can call an Alexa or Google Home and say, change my lights and I'll do it. You can say, start my dryer and it'll do it. Start my vacuum and it'll do it. But how do you, if I understood your question, how do you have that control layer? Today it exists, but what's happening is it's very cumbersome to achieve because every single vendor have their own application and they require you to click at that application. Yes, they might have obviously Matter does that control layer, but it doesn't bring the artificial intelligence yet. It's just the protocol to transport. The protocol to transport could always stay at Matter. What we're getting into is make me comfortable. Does that mean turn the lights on, turn them off, start the thermostat? The humans only recognize make me comfortable. And then down below, you want an intelligent layer to make that decision for you to say, oh, I think you meant I need to dim the lights because it's too bright, or I need to open the window, or I need to lower the HVAC. Those decisions are not, today they're consumer decisions. They don't need to be going forward because the intelligent layer can do that for you. You just need to tell it what you want as an outcome.
We have a question from Timothy Kopp. Timothy, would you like to read it, or shall I?
Sure. So, I mean, we're a wire manufacturer, and we're selling primarily to residential integrators and contractors. And so I think I'm kind of curious. We want to kind of get ahead of any new technologies that are kind of coming down the pike. And so, from a wiring perspective, do you see that everything is going to kind of migrate towards a standard Cat 6, Cat 6A type of infrastructure where you've got a wide variety of adaptability? Or do you think you're going to see more of a focused, type of infrastructure using things like single pair Ethernet or Class 2 cables, that sort of thing?
You asked a good question. I would ask our speaker to just explain to the audience single pair Ethernet. Many people have not heard about it.
Sure. Yeah, single pair Ethernet is basically a technology that drives power and data over just two cables rather than the pair that the Ethernet has, which is 8 cables or 4 pairs. So it's just a way of doing it at a much lower copper rate, but of course that comes with its own limitations. The limitations are the distance and then the power that you can transfer. Uh, to answer your question, Timothy, I think it's probably the combination of all, right? But we know that what's adopted today is you can go buy devices that are Ethernet ready. Single pair Ethernet requires the end devices to be compatible. That doesn't mean the technology is not viable. That doesn't, I mean, automotive picked it up and it's used at the automotive layer all the time as far as single pair Ethernet itself. But just a regular Ethernet cable, it's widely adopted, which means that the product and manufacturers already understood that it's needed and they put forward their product to accept it. No different than just 10 years back, the AC adapter was the way to go. You had to bring in an outlet or you had to bring an AC into your devices and then you can convert and do whatever else you need with it. Today, Ethernet is that familiarity because you look at access points are Ethernet based only, cameras are Ethernet based, rings, thermostat now are that way, lighting, of course, shading, etc. So it's the adoption is going to the Ethernet stack first.
We have a question from an anonymous attendee that I'll read since I don't know who posted it. It says, can you speak briefly to the claims from some in the CRE and residential construction industry that building the infrastructure in this way from the start is, quote, more expensive and doesn't work?
I'll talk about the more expensive doesn't work. It could be subjective, right? When we look at time and innovation, what happens with those two? Usually, you get to an inflection point where the product itself becomes becomes a lot cheaper or a lot better in pricing in comparison. I use the same analogy of the camera back again. We used to buy cameras and it has a coax and a power into it. Today it only works with power over Ethernet. I don't think you can go back and buy it. Same thing with televisions. So the technology itself of power over Ethernet, it's not expensive. It's
Yeah,
cheaper.
you saying you can buy a TV that is powered and gets its data over PoE?
That's correct. There's
Wow.
manufacturers that have that already. LG has it and made it. ThinLab is another company that specializes just in those, and they obviously optimize the level of power that can be delivered with the LCD screen. So 4K, you still get it on power over Ethernet up to 55-inch with one single cable. So the evolution is creating that market, and I don't think it's a matter of price anymore. If I can put price on the uncomfortable and the cumbersome that the traditional systems have, that also can create that has a value. About the comments of not working, I think it's subjective. I mean, we have history and case studies and multiple projects that I can point to with happy customers. Actually, we are in the middle of deployments of a residential project with multiple doors, like close to 170 doors, all condominiums that are going to have Power over Ethernet in it. And this is not our first one.
Are ISPs starting to install routers that include power for the Ethernet ports?
That's a very good one. Yes, certain ISPs already have their modems that are Power over Ethernet ready, meaning that you can just plug the Power over Ethernet in it, and that brings power and data. Multiple ISPs have those products, and they're consumer ready.
Any other questions for? Yes, we have another question from Adrian. Adrian Klassen, go ahead.
Hi guys. Actually, the first question was me as well. I was trying to tee up AK to answer the questions more geared around the labor costs involved in construction, traditional line voltage versus low voltage.
That's a good point. Yeah, definitely in the commercial real estate, we see it quite a bit that the cost of electricians or cost of install of traditional versus the low voltage is much cheaper because of the trade differences.
Well, to the speaker, this is Ken. I'll say that when I did my own home and home office renovation, I spent a few extra $1,000 putting Ethernet everywhere. And I really question how many people are willing to do that now rather than thinking Wi-Fi solves everything.
That's a good point, Ken. But imagine if you did those Ethernet drops didn't go to just an abandoned ports, but you actually plug them into things that you have run power into it already. For example, if you ran power to the light, why can't that Ethernet cable power those 8 lights then in the office? So those are the things that are different now. But obviously, I appreciate what you did there.
We have any more questions? Well, that was quite an excellent presentation and an eye-opener for looking at a world that's not just Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Marta?
Yes, sir. Thank you. That was a great, AK. I appreciate that. And we'll just going back a few slides, we'll have the slides up for everyone. So if you would like to get in contact with AK, the contact information will be on those slides as well as the minutes that we'll post on our website. And if you also would like to get in contact, you could reach out to us and we'll introduce over email. Moving on, so there's a couple programs that we have here at ASHB. One of those programs is our podcast, and what started as a quarterly podcast quickly developed into something a little bit more than just that. We are now currently on, I believe, our 35th episode. I would have to double check that, but we are getting quite a lot of interest from those who are looking to either be a guest or a host on the ASHB podcast series. Really, we're looking at anything that is geared towards the smart home, smart building industry. Topics really do range, anything from smart homes for special needs, role of lighting in AI-powered homes, basement flooding isn't inevitable, and how technology can save your home. So there's a lot of different things that we can speak on. So one of the things that we promote here is if you are interested in being a guest or a host or both, if your organization would like to do a recording where you have someone from your company be a guest and a host, let us know. We'll be happy to find a host for you or a guest. We'll reach out to our contacts here and schedule a meet and greet where we can discuss the talking points and the topic itself, and then schedule a recording. And then, of course, ASHB will promote the recording itself as either a joint promotion with your organization or on its own. So if there is interest, please reach out to us. We could schedule a quick call just to go over the logistics, how it all works, and from there decide which direction you'd like to go in terms of the recording. So please do reach out to us, admin@ashb.com, or if you are already in contact with myself or Greg or Kelly here at ASHB, feel free to reach out to either one of us and express your interest in that. And I will pass it off to Ken.
Thank you very much, Marta. I'd like to remind everyone that your membership in ASHB is primarily to provide you with timely information about developments in our industry. To this end, ASHB has a library that has two major components. One are white papers developed by volunteers in the Smart Home Council. We have published original papers. We try to keep it to no more than about a dozen pages on various topics that you can find in our library. And I'm issuing an invitation now to anyone that has a topic they'd like to address. We can provide overviews of new business areas. We can provide technology summaries. We can provide market development summaries. We ask you to take the initiative to propose new white papers, and I and Marta and Greg will help organize a subcommittee to help you develop and review the white papers and eventually make them available to the Smart Home Council and to the general ASHB membership. So please reach out to us with your proposals for white papers. Now, complementary to this is our research library consisting of papers from the trade press. We have an organized procedure for reviewing trade press articles for relevance to ASHB members. The way it works is Marta and Greg scour the industry for potential papers to disseminate to ASHB members, and they make that available to the ASHB members who volunteer to review up to 5 papers at a time. The motivation for doing it, of course, is to benefit the members of ASHB, but also to get a token thank you in terms of $25 per paper reviewed plus $25 in credit to ASHB services. So you can take out 5 papers at a time, review it, and we have a very organized review form. We ask you to write a 100-word summary of the paper, provide the pertinent details and relevance of the paper, and most importantly, keywords. We have a library of keywords, and we use that to help members search for a particular topic. So if you wanted to learn more about Power over Ethernet, we probably have a keyword for that. In fact, that reminds me, I checked out 5 papers, and it's on my to-do list to review them. So I got to get it done before Marta calls me and reminds me I haven't done it yet. Also want to tell you about the ASHB journal. If you've got an idea for a paper that's more than a group-produced white paper, but a more researched paper or a report on a trade show that you've attended, you're welcome to make a submission to the ASHB journal. You can go online under ASHB marketing and find quite an assortment of articles written for the ASHB journal. I personally have been writing for the ASHB journal almost since the start of the organization 30 years ago. It's quite highly respected in the industry, and Marta is quite excellent in laying it out and being responsive to making sure the article is as you submitted, and each can even help you catch typos. So keep in mind the ability for you to offer Smart Home Council white papers, to check out our research library of trade journal trade magazine white papers, and also to submit your original papers to the ASHB journal. So at this point, I ask, does anyone have new business they'd like to raise with the council? Any ideas perhaps for a keynote you'd like us to invite? New white papers, as I said, the white paper ideas come from you, the council members. Are new projects you'd like ASHB to undertake? So if you're not ready to discuss your proposals right now, feel free to reach out to me. You can get my contact data at kenwacks.com, KENWACKS.com, or contact ASHB, that's ASHB.com. You'll find the contact there. Marta will now tell us about upcoming trade shows that ASHB will be participating at.
Thanks so much, Ken. And I promise any reminder will always be kind. So coming up, some of the events that are taking place, we have two events from Parks Associates, one being on August 20th, that's the Smart Energy Summit, and this is the virtual event. I believe this is the second of the two, the first one being an in-person event. And we also have the Smart Spaces event taking place in September 15th to 16th in Dallas, Texas. Of course, we have CEDIA coming up September 1st to 4th, and ASHB will actually be present. We'll have a booth there. We'll also be moderating a panel at CEDIA. So if you are interested in attending that, let us know. You'll see
Marta,
that on
I do plan to be there. Who from ASHB is going to be in Denver?
Oh, it'll be myself and Greg, actually.
Oh, good. Look forward to seeing you.
Yeah, perfect. And then we'll have Greg moderating the panel. So if anyone is interested in attending that, let us know and we'll let you know the date and time of that. You can see that on our social channels as well. So if you do follow us on X or on LinkedIn, you can catch the promotion of that on there. And if you don't, please do follow us. So we'd love to, share all of the relevant industry news with you. And that's the great source, of course, to do so. Lastly, we've got two events. We have the International Smart Space Exhibition that is taking place in China, September 23rd to 27th. We will not be attending that. We do have an event coming up in October that we'll be attending in Taiwan. This is not one of those. And then, of course, we have the IoT Tech Expo in October 19th to 20th. And that's taking place in Amsterdam. With that, I will pass it off to Ken to adjourn.
Well, thank you very much, Marta. Last opportunity for anyone to make any comments.
Well, I wanted to bring up that this is David. I was invited by Parks to speak on August 20th. I'm waiting to find out who the other panelists are. But the key is to bring back to the question of time of use rates and energy opportunities in homes. There's enormous amount of effort now across North America, but Canada particularly, for energy efficiency in homes so that we can have the EVs and we can have the data centers. And so many of the technologies that were presented today, if we can show that they pay off with incentives from the utility, which is I'm working on with others on improving the building envelope, having a demand response eco thermostat, etc. So for those in Ontario, if you join Ontario Sustainable Energy Association, which is where I'm working, we could bring you to the information from Save On Energy on all these programs. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, David. So with that, we've reached the end of our meeting. We've already scheduled our next meeting for November 3rd on noon on that day. So we look forward to your attending and seeing us again in 3 months. Meanwhile, please keep in mind the opportunity to propose white papers for this committee to develop. So just reach out to any of us and we'll be glad to help you through the process and help you focus on developing white papers. So thank you very much and appreciated all your attendance, and the meeting is now adjourned.
Thanks so much.